How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about Columbus Day because today is Monday, October the 9th of 2017, and it is Columbus Day. And, you know, I get on my phone this morning, I get on my social media, I scrub the internets for stories today, and then I see that there's some kind of big movement to, air quotes, protest Columbus Day in favor of, air quotes, Indigenous Peoples Day. Now, what I'm going to do before I get into the actual meat of the topic today, I'm going to roll this quick video, I think from Yahoo News. And it has some of the stuff I talked about just now kind of wrapped up and expanded a little bit. You'll be able to see some names and faces to go with the actual movements in certain cities where they are. I think in LA County or the city of Los Angeles, they have moved to abolish Columbus Day. And I think also in Oberlin, Ohio, they have done the same thing. But before I get into all that, check out the video. I'll come back. I'll give you my thoughts about the video and about Columbus Day being protested and whatever else is on my mind. So without further ado, go ahead and roll it.
We will no longer stand for revisionist thinking, celebrating someone who was responsible for setting in motion the greatest genocide known in world history.
Indigenous Peoples Day is a growing movement to replace Columbus Day. It celebrates the culture of Native Americans and challenges the idea that Christopher Columbus was the first to discover America.
And to have him recognized every year is like a slap in the face to us Native Americans.
So how did the Indigenous Peoples Day movement start? It traces back to 1977, when a delegation of Native Americans spoke about it at an international conference in Switzerland, sponsored by the United Nations. It focused on issues regarding discrimination against them. The movement picked up steam in 1990, when the First Continental Conference on 500 Years of Indian Resistance was held in Ecuador. At the meeting, representatives from Indian groups agreed they would mark 1992 as a year to promote liberation. That year was significant because it was the 500th anniversary of the first voyages of Christopher Columbus. So attendees from Northern California planned protests against the Columbus Day celebration in the San Francisco Bay Area in 1992. A task force called the Resistance 500 also brought their concerns to the City Council of Berkeley, California. They proposed the idea of Indigenous Peoples Day, and Berkeley became the first city to adopt it in 1992. Less than half of U.S. states give employees a paid day off for Columbus Day. And although Indigenous Peoples Day isn't a federal holiday, these are the cities and states that celebrate it in place of Columbus Day, as the movement continues to grow.
Okay, so you saw that. You see what's going on. Now, okay, the video that we just saw, I mean, I don't really understand what's the whole big deal. You people out there, you know, so-called protests. And really what I think is that people just want to find something to protest about. It doesn't really matter what it is. It could be about Columbus Day. It could be about, you know, dubs versus subs and anime. It could be about Redskins versus Cowboys in football. Whatever it is, people want to find something to debate about, some kind of conflict to be involved with. You know, maybe it's exciting. Maybe it's fun. I'm not quite sure. But at the end of the day, I think all of this is really just silly, as much ado about nothing. What is the big deal about Columbus Day? I mean, most people don't even celebrate it anyway. People talking about their protest and the celebration. Well, the average person in reality does not celebrate it. Some do, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But the average person doesn't celebrate Columbus Day. Not everybody even gets off for Columbus Day. And those who do pretty much just use that day to do whatever. They're not necessarily going to a Columbus Day parade or anything like that. So what are you really protesting? You're just protesting the fact that it is a day called Columbus Day. And my thing is this: Christopher Columbus was able to usher in the new world into where we are right now, which is current day United States, right? That's what it was. And I don't think it's something that should be kind of like scoffed at. The Italian Americans, they celebrate Columbus Day. Not all, of course, hashtag not all, but many Italian Americans celebrate Columbus Day because, of course, Christopher Columbus was Italian. I think his Italian name was Cristoforo Colombo. Like, he is somebody that's very important to Italian culture. He comes from Genoa, which is right there on the northwest coast before you get to the boot, essentially, before you get to the extended peninsula. So he's a big part of Italian history and of Italian culture and of Western culture in general, because after he came, that's what precipitated other European journeys, kind of like Captain Cook over there in Australia. And I did a video about that, how they're trying to eliminate him, but now they're trying to eliminate Christopher Columbus. But without him, it's difficult to tell when the process of Western expansion would have happened, which has benefited many of us over here in the West. Now, some people would say that it's better for the so-called indigenous peoples to be celebrated. But my question is this: what does that really mean to be indigenous? Like, you were here first, but according to those who study human migration and human movement, we all started from Africa and then we expanded from there. And then those that study the Native Americans, so-called Native Americans, have concluded that they came from the Bering Strait, which is in Asia, and then through like way up north, Alaska, Canada, and all of that, and then came down. The Aztecs, they're not originally from Central America. They came from somewhere else and then conquered people that were there, right? And then when you're talking about indigenous people, people say that as if they were just one people. They were not, obviously. There were many different tribes, many different confederations, many different groups. Maybe within the tribe, you had certain different groups that were among themselves and did not align with the other groups in the same tribe. So that was going on. It's the same thing I talked about with Australia. People said that, oh, Captain Cook came and he wiped out the Aboriginals and all this and that. But the Aboriginals were not just one group. The Aboriginals were over 900 tribes that existed on the continent of Australia and also Tasmania. And they were all fighting each other for possession of land and resources, right? They would have their own little corner of the continent. They would protect that from outside invaders. And then if you came into their space, the consequence for that could be death. So the Aboriginals, Native Americans, they can say, okay, we're going to protect our space, maybe even expand into someone else's space. And that's fine. That's not genocidal. That's not colonialism. That's not all these isms, obics, is whatever, this, that, and the third. That's fine. But when you're talking about somebody white who comes and does it, then all of a sudden that's a bad thing. My thing is, if we're going to be triggered about Christopher Columbus, why not be triggered about other tribes, the so-called indigenous people who are not really indigenous? Because my thing is, if you're talking about somebody that's indigenous, that means that they were there from the beginning. Like, what does that really mean, indigenous? You know, if everybody came from one point of origin and they moved out, then how was anybody really indigenous? It doesn't make any sense. At the end of the day, Western expansion was a good thing for the world. It needed to happen. If you are a weaker people, you will fall to the stronger people. It is what it is. That's just life. It doesn't even really matter what race you are, what color you are. The same patterns of human behavior have been exhibited all throughout human history. You're talking about the continent of Africa, the region called Europe, Asia, Australia, North America, South America. Everywhere where you have human beings, the same thing happens. Within the group, outside of a group, from opposing groups, empires, tribes, races, religions, everything. That's how human behavior is. To celebrate Christopher Columbus is celebrating Western culture and Western expansion. Now, it's funny how many of those who do not want to celebrate Western culture and Western expansion depend upon that which they hate to survive every day. They really enjoy the fruits of that labor that's happened many hundreds of years ago, right? Indigenous people, that whole thing is just a big crock of bull. It's just an anti-white thing. It's an anti-West thing. It's an anti-America thing, because without people like Christopher Columbus, would we be here right now today? Maybe so, but I'm not quite sure about that. I think at the end of the day, as I close, this whole thing about Christopher Columbus and trying to abolish the day, they've been successful at doing that, like I said, in Oberlin, Ohio, and they're trying to get the ball rolling in Los Angeles. I think that whole thing is just a big waste of time, a waste of money, and a waste of resources. You're talking about L.A. Let's fix Skid Row. How about all those homeless black men on drugs, mental problems, and everything else out there just begging for help, dying for help? But we want to spend our time, energy, resources, etc. on trying to phase in the whole Indigenous Peoples Day. Is really a big crying shame, but that's just what it is right now, unfortunately, in 2017 America. So what do you think? Do you think that Christopher Columbus Day should be just totally abolished, get rid of it? He is a genocider. And what is genocide? I think I saw in that clip where they said that was the biggest genocide in human history. Really? If you want to talk about genocide, let's talk about Russia with Stalin, Lenin. Let's talk about China with Mao Zedong. Let's talk about Cambodia with Pol Pot. Let's talk about these places where real genocides happen, where people got wiped out. Nazi Germany with the Jews and all of that. Let's talk about real genocide. Let's not talk about people that came in contact with other people that were not prepared for the illnesses they had already inside of them and had a negative reaction and died off as a result. And here's another question I have for you. How many Native Americans were there actually before the Europeans came? Right? People said that, oh, they wiped them down. They wiped them out to a very small number. Well, how many were there really? Was there a census? I don't really know. If you know the answer to that, let me know in the box. But I just don't know. I think all of this stuff is overblown about genocide and colonialism. Let's celebrate Western culture. Let's not be so much into the SJW narrative. But whatever your comments are, let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.